economics class this week, we're talking about something that's kind of unpleasant, taxes. So I don't know of anybody that enjoys taxes that much, but maybe we don't really know it or not, but taxes actually help everything in our community go round the world. So meaning that we need the taxes to help build our infrastructure, to help our people that need disability, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those kinds of things. So even though we don't like to have taxes taken out of our checks, it's sort of a necessary evil. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about our chapters this week, about our public spending. So as I just said, we are taxed so the governments can spend money in certain ways. And sometimes corporations are taxed or people are taxed somewhat unfairly, like maybe gasoline tax. We are all taxed the same amount for gasoline tax, but somebody that maybe is a student, does that seem fair that they pay the same as Charles Koch, the Koch Industries? Doesn't really seem fair, but that's what it ends up being. So basically a flat tax or an excise tax that's put on gasoline is somewhat unfair to people that are struggling to make money or just don't make much money. So just think about those things when you see gas go up. Is it going to the producers? Is it an excise tax that a lot of taxes are hidden in gas that we don't necessarily dive into to see what they are? I don't necessarily know what all taxes are in a gallon of gas. It would probably be annoying to me if I found out, as well as annoying when it goes up. So just as you're going through the economics courses, just think about taxes and how you don't want to spend your money on taxes unless it's going to be for good. For example, Social Security, disability. A lot of people need disability to survive. It's not their fault that they were injured or hurt. Or how about people that have paid Social Security their whole life and now they want to retire? So to me, that's perfectly normal and logical. They should have that opportunity to go ahead and draw those funds. So I have paid for people along the way. Now maybe it's my turn, in a few years to draw, and that will keep up as we go along. One of the interesting things is we talk about unemployment. Now, unemployment is an interesting subject because there are a lot of states talking about raising minimum wage that would help the unemployed. Minimum wage was created by the government probably about the 1960s as an aid to help people get back on their feet. It was never created to be a job that supports a whole family. So the meaning of it has changed in these years. Do we need to change it as far as what people think it should be? Probably we should. The government right now, I think it's about $7-8 an hour. That is a government minimum wage. That's how the government looks at it. From the 1960s, there's been small incremental increases as we've gone along, but is that really what we need now? Probably not. These are things we need to look at as we go through. A lot of cities are just going ahead and taking it upon themselves to pay people more. I think I saw where Bank of America is paying, beginning employees $20-some an hour. That will probably become a popular point with some companies. So there is good in these different things that are happening around with other companies, but it should be probably something that is talked about at some point with the government as far as getting it raised and not having it back in the 1960s rate. So anyway, sometimes we have to have taxes because things are just not good. One of the examples in your book was an externality tax, and that would be like if we Well, it was kind of funny. I just heard a story where people that lived around a pickleball courts were mad because of the noise. Maybe they'll be fined, the pickleball court will be fined for excessive noise. But externalities is kind of like that. Maybe you have drones flying and messing in your area, and really there's not a whole lot of rules on drones yet. So maybe that's the next thing they'll add taxes to. If you have drones, you're going to be taxed because there's no control over it. So sometimes it's just something that comes up that we don't even know, and it turns out it's kind of a bad thing. A lot of times it was used as a pollution deterrent, because maybe back about 30-40 years people would pollute water, so externalities, the air, the pollution in the air, in the water was very common. Now we've done a lot as far as a country to clean these things up, so maybe we don't see them on these kinds of things, but maybe we'll see them on other things. One of the things I did think about was maybe electric car, the batteries, disposal of them might be an externality tax at some point. So I don't know, I've heard it's very expensive to dispose of this kind of thing, so we'll see as we go along. So anyway, we have public and private goods, and one of the public goods that our money, our taxes pay for right now, we probably would say we're seeing a lot of it, is the withdrawal from Afghanistan. We pay for defense. We all pay with our taxes. I can't say I don't want to because I'm going to be taxed. It's not a specific tax, but the government takes in the money and then divides it as they see or vote. A lot of the tax money is from income taxes. So income taxes are based on how much you make. So somebody that's making more money should pay more money. That makes sense to me, and probably to you too. So that money, once it comes into the government coffer, is used for however they see fit. Believe it or not, the defensive money spent around the world has gone down. The monies that the United States uses really is a lot of the social issues, Medicare, Medicaid, that kind of thing, surprisingly. So those are issues that most likely your political congressman or senator will not want to touch, because who wants to touch the poor person that needs that Medicaid, Medicare money? Nobody's want to touch that. So logic tells me that that will keep going up. Now, as a voter, you can look at these issues and vote your causes, and I say that's a good thing, because a lot of this stuff is putting the people in office and the other ones that get voted out. So just pay attention and try to think about your voting rights, as your money is going to be collected for income tax as you make more money. So like I said, the government likes to put things like excise taxes on maybe things that are bad for us, smoking, for example, cigarettes, because they know that people are hooked and they're going to spend however much money for a package or a carton of cigarettes are. And so they tax that like they do alcohol. They kind of prey upon the people that are addicted, and they charge extra taxes on alcohol, because it's these two things, cigarettes and alcohol, are called sin taxes. So they know they can get away with it. People are mad every time they go up, but they have to admit, yeah, it's really not good for me, probably. So the government just kind of, okay, that's some easy money for us. So they put excise tax thing on things like that. And I would guess at some point, if other things come up for legalization, there'll be a whole lot of taxes on that too. That'll be interesting to see anyway. So I just wanted to briefly go over these taxes. A proportional tax that we were talking about earlier, everybody's going to pay the same. So if you make $100,000 or if you make 20, you're going to pay $1,000 for taxes. So that doesn't seem like the fair solution in this type of economy. What happens is we pay a progressive tax or income tax. So the more you make, the more they take. How's that? So that's how usually those kinds of taxes are going to be collected. And then we have a regressive tax in our Social Security, which is collected, because if one makes around, I think it's about $120,000, they don't pay Social Security tax after that amount, so it stops. And my thought on that is, yay. People will get tired of paying different taxes, so if you get to a point where you don't have to pay one of them, good. That's kind of what we work for, to keep more of our money. And in the economy, the way it is, that's a good thing, to have more of our money. And like I said, the different taxes in our United States would be more income tax that are collected for the different things that we are public sector things, that, let's say, our national parks, or things like that we all can benefit from. And then we have state taxes, of course, as we know, and the state taxes are sales taxes, and the state will say we're going to spend probably a chunk of it on education, which they'll get some federal money for too, but the state spends lots of money on education. In fact, in the economy of states, that's an interesting thought, is education. A lot of times the unions, when you're paying a state tax, you're paying your state taxes every year. A lot of times there could be a chunk of it going for public school retirement funds. And I found that really interesting, that we could have so much tax money going to that. So unions have a big say in a lot of these things, and a lot of our tax money will go towards those kinds of things. So another thing to look at as you're, looking at your own economy and your state and the taxes that you pay. So it kind of opened my eyes to see that these retirement these unions take so much money out of our state taxes. The other thing that kind of annoys me is that we pay so much for the postal system, and that's, our taxes. I don't know. I don't feel like the postal system is really needed as much as it had been, but they get millions and millions of dollars. So maybe that's something like in the real world, businesses like that would be cut or trimmed down. So maybe that's a thought on that one. So anyway, these chapters are talking about some different taxes and different situations that we can end up being in as a nation, and how our money is spent, and choices that government makes. We don't really have a choice of our taxes, what to do with it, but the choices that the government makes, and how they end up charging these kinds of income taxes, what they're doing with it, that kind of thing. So in your book, it does have a pie chart on how the division is as far as, let's say, military, different aid, Medicare, Medicaid, social programs, that kind of thing. So it's interesting to see where the money goes, and probably is somewhat surprising to some of you that are looking at it for the first time. So anyway, couple things. Packback. If you're taking both classes, the macro and the micro, make sure you do 2 posts as well as answer 2 other people, so it's a total of 6 for 2 classes. And I went back and looked at the homework, and I saw where some graphs creeped in. I tried to take them out. Like I told you, I don't want you to spend a lot of time on graphs. And I apologize for that. So I'm looking again at the homework to see it's not graph heavy, because it just takes too long to learn the system. And to tell you the truth, I had somebody ask me a question about one of them, and the only thing they did is they didn't put a label on it, and it counts off, and that's just crazy. So anyway, those are a couple things I wanted to talk to you about, and have a great week, and to see what the economy is doing around you, particularly the stock market. It's at record levels. Why is that? Do you have any thoughts on why it is? I haven't really looked at it real close, but those are just some things, if you have a 401k at some time now or at some point, you'll want to be aware of these things. So have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.